Hi guys, and welcome to another Facehammer show about Warhammer the Old World. In this show, I'm going to be going through the new FAQ document that's dropped over the last couple of days, and it was yesterday or today, or even on the weekend, and talking about what that means for the rules going forward, and also what impact that has on some of the stuff that I've done shows on, because obviously I've been doing lots of deep dive shows of information. There's the nitty gritty stuff that people kind of want to know the answers for that aren't obvious, and I've had loads of questions and comments, WhatsApp groups, and I will try and get to those. Again, like, I've been away, so I haven't had much time, so I'll be catching up this week. Thank you for everyone who's been engaging in that way. That's fine. Feel free to reach out. I'll try and get to you. Some questions, if I haven't answered, it's because I haven't had time to look for the answer. I've had one very complicated one about flank charges. I will get to it. when I hopefully the FAQ will clear some of this up anyway. So in this show, I'm going to be talking about the FAQ, what it means, and everything it means. But before I get into that, I just say the weekend's been really exciting. There's been lots of news. We've seen the new Orc and Goblin reveals from LVO. And I'll probably do a separate show on that. But you can see it yourself on Warhammer Community. But I mean, I'll talk about my thoughts and feelings on that and what I think might be in the Arcane Journal. So I'll do that as a separate show. Also, we've obviously had the release, so people have got their stuff or bought stuff. I was in Firestorm Games in Cardiff for the event, which was the launch weekend. So I was playing Age of Sigmar team event with the Black Sun boys. So shout out to the team. And I say the buzz around the hall and the venue for everyone excited about Old World was great. A couple of people poo-pooing it, but I'm not going to let that get me down. End of the day, it's like, if you don't like it, don't like it. But so many people were remembering fondly their experiences of their teenage years, particularly myself, going back to cardboard cutout models and all the rest of it. And I had a really good chat with Rob, who's the owner of Firestorm on the Friday. And we were just talking about the game, how good it is, how exciting it is. He's got his dwarfs, he's rebasing, he's had a game, his mate who's had his 54th birthday. They learnt Warhammer Old World, and that was 40 years ago. They were doing the same when they were 14, obviously not Old World, but another version of Warhammer. So that's 40 years still playing Warhammer, which I think is amazing. So yeah, just the buzz was great, and I had a couple of my opponents. So I played Chris Mills from Fluffhammer, and if you don't follow him on Instagram, and he's got a YouTube channel as well, his painting stuff's amazing. And he won Best Painted at the weekend as well, so shout out to him. And we had a great game. It was really close. I think I got a little lucky, but there you go. And then I played Darren Watson. This is a complete opposite. This wasn't close at all. Horrendous matchup for me, but we had a giggle. I love Darren. Me and Darren had a great game. We were just talking about Old World for a lot of it because my army got absolutely destroyed by Stormcast Mortal Wounds, which is what happens when you get matched into that. So, so it was a good event. I might do a show covering the event itself and what happened, but this is about the Old World FAQ. So let's get into the show. So let's get ready for some hammer to your face. Let's go through the FAQ. So, the Old World Rulebook FAQ. So this has been posted. If you don't know where to find these, you go to Warhammer Community, and up here is the downloads, and there is the Old World as a section. There's also the Legends armies that have dropped over the weekend or last week. Again, there's a lot of content to be recorded here. I'm not going to go into my opinions about should they be legal or not. I just think that independents probably can just choose. So a lot of TOs will probably just say, yeah, fill your boots, and some won't. And then some people might not go to the event if they're there, and some will go to the event if they're there. I just think it's the only thing I will say is that from my experience with Age of Sigmar and the confusion of compendium, can I use them? Can I not use them? Oh, I can use them. No, I can't use them. It's kind of annoying when you rebase stuff and then it becomes invalid. So if they're sort of saying, well, these factions are not going to be supported, you're not going to get your hopes up about, eventually they'll get round to doing these, won't they? No, they've said no. So I think there's enough factions in the game to focus on, but it doesn't mean you can't do cool things like do a vampire-themed Bretonnian army or a vampire-themed Tomb King army. As back in the day, you had a undead book. It wasn't Tomb Kings, it wasn't vampires. I don't think vampires had a book till 5th. It might have even been 6th, actually. No, it was 5th. And so basically before that, it was undead. So, you know, the Black Coach didn't exist and things like that. So you had your own book, and it had, I think Arcan the Black was a lich on a chariot. And then you had like Cetra was just a guy on foot with a little mace, a little mummy, units of mummies, things like that. So I'd say, like, you know, don't let it affect your enjoyment of playing rank and flank again. Just pick an army. If it was me, and I generally go for official, that's why I didn't play Ninth Age, I'll just pick an army within the ones that are supported and just play that and just go, fair enough. Maybe the one day there'll be something. Maybe they'll release a new version of these that fit the timeline. So you might get a new version of these factions in the old world. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen. But I would just say, don't let it affect your enjoyment of getting into the game, because the game is great. Anyway, so we've got the FAQ document. You can read it yourself. I'm going to just talk about it more from a, did we as expected, or what does this mean? So it says, can a close order or open order unit be one model wide? Yes, that's fine. And it says, if a wizard miscast rolls an 8 or higher, is it just that wizard that cannot cast any more spells, or is it all wizards? All wizards can't cast for the remainder of the turn. So that's pretty big. That miscast could really screw over your plans. It says about what happens to remains in play that already in effect if the wizard casts it again. It says attempts to cast it again, doesn't successfully cast it. It says it ends immediately. So if you've got remains in play out and you try and cast it on a different target and you fail, it doesn't stay on the original target. So it's quite an important thing to know. Bound spells are fine if you've got armor or shield. It says, does a wizard that joined a unit need to be in base contact with an enemy model to cast assailment spells, or do they need to be only within the fighting rank? So it's just the fighting rank for assailment. Now this one's interesting. If a wizard declines a challenge and retires from combat, does their unit lose the benefit of any self spells that they've cast? And the answer is yes. So when you've got this spell that says the wizard and the unit they've joined get something, if you get challenged out, like you refuse a challenge and they push you to the back, well, you're losing that buff. Do models with fly get affected by dangerous terrain vortexes? Yes, they do. They're infinitely high. Can't fly over that big column of fire or swirly magic thing. It says movement is a unit's maximum possible charge the maximum distance from an enemy unit that can declare a charge, or the maximum distance it can move when making a charge move. So it's to declare a charge. So that's your movement plus your a 6, and then if you've got swift stride, it's at an extra 3. So if your movement 8, then it's going to be 14. If you've got swift stride, then it's going to be 17. That's it. Even if you could go, because you could roll an extra 6 on that dice, so you could actually go 20, but you can't declare a charge in that way because your max declare distance. When a unit performs a maneuver, can its front edge pass through another unit? No, except when you pivot. So that's quite interesting. You can pivot through units, like, in a way, you know. It says about wheeling. Can the rear corner pass through another unit? Yes, apparently, as long as it doesn't end its move on top or within one of an enemy unit. So basically, that's that thing I talked about railroading or restricting people by putting stuff down the side. Then it basically says that as they move, the back ranks would like filter round, basically. So they would wait and then filter in. It says when a unit redirects a charge, can it charge a unit that lies beyond its maximum possible? No. It says if a unit is arrayed in close order, wishes to use the fast cavalry special rule to perform a quick turn after marching, can any of the models within the move further than their movement characteristic? So it says no model can move further than twice its movement characteristic. However, there are obvious exceptions, such as when marching, column marches, or when a dice roll determines the unit's movement. So that's quite interesting. I think that's to try and stop like fast cavalry doing weird pivot things, because technically with this you could use a fast cavalry unit one model wide, and you could march then you could pivot, or you could do a wheel basically. So if you imagine like your unit goes up in a line like you know, like this. This is probably the easier way to describe it. So the unit goes up in a line like this, and then you do a little wheel here. So you do a little wheel here, and then suddenly it's like whang, swangs all the way out, and then you could pivot, you know, stuff like that. So it's to stop like jank with fast cavalry, which was a thing. No one really did it in the game, but there were theorists who said, oh, I can do this thing. No one really played it that way. The independent scene didn't let it be played that way. But that's quite interesting. So you can't be more than W move. Okay, so this next was a bit confusing for me. It says, when a unit enters the battlefield as reinforcements, is there a limit to how far onto the battlefield models can be placed? It says, yes, the unit is considered to have moved onto the battlefield. Therefore, no model can be placed more than twice its movement from the edge of the battlefield the unit enters from. Now, that is a little bit contradictory for me for what the ambush rule says, where it says you're placed on the edge. So the way I read it is that you would put the unit touching the edge and then you would get to move. But obviously this is going to mean that your limit to being on the table is going to be double your movement from the edge, which, you know, kind of makes sense, because obviously you could do some weird stuff like have a very deep unit that touches the edge that then would get lots of movement into the middle of the battlefield, then do a reform, then you've gained a lot of space. You know, if you put your model 1 wide, 20 long, the back touches the edge, you're already 20 inches on, basically, if you're on 25 mil. Roughly. I know it's not exact, but so yeah, okay, that makes sense. So I guess the way that would be the way it's played. Some of the things in this FAQ kind of contradict the main rulebook, and I think sometimes that's just the designers going, oh, we wanted it to work like this, and maybe the words didn't quite do it. So it says shooting. Can a model use a breath weapon after marching? No. Which kind of makes sense, and I kind of expected that. So can units partially on a hill shoot in 2 ranks or join a line of sight across other units that are not themselves on a hill? There's only models that are on the hill. For example, a unit consists of 20 models in 2 ranks of 10, and only 5 models in each rank are on the hill. Only those 10 models can claim the benefits on being on a hill. So basically, if the model's on the hill, that model gets the benefit, which kind of makes sense, because in Old World, it's not like the whole unit gets a buff, or it's majority of the unit, then you get the buff. It's like the models individually. Says, can a unit on a hill draw a line of sight across and shoot over another unit on the same hill? So it says a unit closer to the top of a hill, i.e. center, or the edge of the battlefield, can draw a line of sight across and shoot over one that is closer to the bottom. Units cannot draw a line of sight or across or shoot over units that are closer to the top of the hill than they are. So if you've got a hill and you've got like a staggered unit, like 2 units, and you're firing this way, then yeah, you do, apparently. So that's quite cool. Now, there's some interesting things about war machines here. There's, can a cannon target a point on the ground if woods or a hill lie between it and that point? It says no, you cannot shoot over woods or hills, even if it's on a hill. However, a stone thrower can. So cannons can't shoot like past or through things. You need to be able to see the point on the ground, basically. It says, can target a point on the ground if another unit lies between it and that point, not unless the cannon is on a hill and the unit is not. However, a stone thrower can. So you can see stone throwers have less restrictions on line of sight. Now, I think there are some extra rules coming with war machines in here, but from what I've heard from someone, but I'll check. So it says combat. If my unit loses a round of combat and either gives ground or falls back in good order, can it choose to use different weapons in the next turn if the enemy made a follow-up or pursuit move? So it says no, because although they're separated momentarily, they remain locked in place. You know, you can't do that. Now, the other thing that interesting in that, if you and they don't pursue or follow up and then they charge you again, then yes, you could. So what happens to a unit that gives ground whilst within 2 inches of the edge of the battlefield? Should any part of the unit cross beyond the edge of the battlefield, the entire unit's removed from play and is destroyed. So don't get pushed off the back. So be a bit careful where you if you're there being pushed back through your own deployment zone. So don't do that. This is what happens to a unit that cannot give ground due to the presence of another unit. It just stops immediately as if it was surrounded. So having just checked that, the being surrounded just means that you count it as a draw, essentially. So you just don't move. So it doesn't really have any negative connotations, which is quite interesting, because if you are playing like armies that don't flee, like Tomb Kings, you could put something directly behind the unit to stop them giving ground, so you're not going to be moved, even if you're losing the combat. That's quite interesting. That opens up a little bit of tactical play, I think. It says here, what happens if a unit that wishes to make a pursuit or overrun move cannot due to the presence of other units? So it may be impossible for pursuing or overrunning unit to move without ending up on top of another unit, in which cases the unit does not move, but is considering to have made the pursuit or overrun move. So that means that if you roll the dice and catch them, for example, I believe you would still kill them, but you wouldn't move. So you could even chump block your own thing. And you might even be able to get the reform in that case. If a unit completely destroys an enemy in combat and makes an overrun move, can it attempt to reform after moving? Unless it pursued into a fresh enemy, yes. A unit that overruns makes a normal pursuit move, and since the enemy has been wiped out, it may attempt to reform as if it run down its foe, as described on 129. Now, that actually is quite big for frenzied units, because frenzied units have to pursue and have to chase, and it was always a bit of a handicap, because you wipe something out, and then you end up having to run, and then your flank's exposed or your back's exposed. Now, you can reform, and I think you have to take a leadership test, but you can reform. That's really good, because basically now you're like, okay, I've got a chance to then change my facing. So yeah, that's cool. Nice change, that one. If a wizard engaged in a challenge knows and uses an assailment spell that uses a template, are the hits distributed amongst rear ranks of the enemy unit as described in 1.5, or is it only the participant in the challenge? It's only the other participant in the challenge that is hit. So you could have a wizard go into a challenge and just use an assailment spell and absolutely murk the guy he's fighting and get overkill. So that's interesting as well. I think like chaos heroes on like mounts, you know, they'll have like a decent armor save, could go in and start just chucking assailments in. Are units required to make panic tests due to the actions of friendly models? For example, if a wizard miscast rolls a 2 to 4 on the miscast table, causing a cascade, insufficient casualties on a friendly unit to cause it to panic, yes, basically. That's fairly obvious for people who've played the old game. And it says units that must make a panic test when a friendly unit strength 5 or more is destroyed. When is the unit strength counted? For the start of the turn, start of the phase, the point in which it was destroyed. Start the phase. So if you had a unit strength of 10, it's destroyed by shooting in a single phase, then that would cause panic. USRs, can you choose not to roll for ambushes? No. Unless itself or the scenario has a special rule that changes the way in which ambushes arrive, you must roll for their arrival during each of your turns from round 2 onwards. However, any special rules that affect the arrival of ambushes which take effect after the start of the turn but before compulsory moves may be used as normal, regardless of the result of the roll. So that's things like the Tomb Kings, Lich Priests bringing units on. So that means like the Tomb King like ambush units, you've got like more chances to get them on, so they might be a bit more reliable. Then you've got if a weapon with the Armor Bane X special rule also has the poison attacks rule, what happens when I roll a 6 to hit? So it says that Armor Bane will not have no effect if you don't make a wound roll, but you can choose to roll to wound with the hope of rolling that 6. But then you lose the benefit of poison. So basically, if you're fighting against something that's got a very good armor save with your rend-free poisoned attacks, you could go, actually, I'm just going to not use poison. and I'm going to roll to wound as normal because although I've wounded, I just think they're going to make their armor save. So I'd rather go for that 6. It may not, it probably never really works out as mathematically the right thing to do, but because you'd have to roll to wound and they'd have to fail the save. Whereas if they've got like a 3+ save, there's a 33% chance of them failing it. So I think it depends. Like, maybe, I don't know if you ever do that unless you had like Ren 4 or something stupid. And it says some mounted models have the countercharge special rule, but others do not, even though they have the same type of mount. Is this intentional? It says yes, it represents a rule about the skill and ferocity of the rider, not their mount. Not every rider is willing or able to perform a countercharge. There you go. Can a model with large target draw a line of sight over or through another model with large target? No. So basically large targets are block line of sight to each other. It's kind of fairly obvious. If a character without Vanguard joins a unit with it during deployment, can the character make a Vanguard move with the unit? No. And also, if the unit it would not be able to do it either. However, if the unit's in skirmish, it can leave the character out. So I guess that means because you can move around the character, whereas if you're ranked up, you can't really. What happens if a weapon is subject to both ponderous and quick shot? They cancel each other out, meaning the wound suffer -1 hit modifier for moving and shooting. Can a character that is fleeing use rallying cry special rule? Not really. I mean, it kind of makes sense that a running away hero doesn't make people rally. Quite the opposite, in fact. Then we've got this question about regeneration saves. So we know they count for combat res. So basically say if you pass against a multiple wounds attack, do you need to roll the number of multiple wounds generated? Yes. So it depends how many you count towards combat. It says, can a unit that deploys using the Scout's special rule make a Vanguard move? No. When a unit that does not have stupidity is joined by a character that does, the unit becomes subject to the special rule. What happens if the character leaves the unit? Obviously, they cease to be affected by it. Can a character without veteran special rule that has joined a unit with this veteran special rule benefit from it when attempting to use a special rule that requires them to make a leadership test, rallying cry, for example? No. When a character attempts to use a special rule that requires them to take a leadership test, they must use their own leadership characteristic, and unless specifically stated otherwise, cannot use any additional rules that they themselves do not have. And it says, some unusual formations, some attacks allow a specific model to be hit, to be targeted. Can such an attack be used to break the coherency of skirmishers? For example, it says, as stated on 184, you cannot remove a model from a unit of skirmishers. If you're doing so, would cause the unit to lose coherency. However, if an attack targets a specific model, such as a champion or character, that model must be removed if the attack reduces it to 0 wounds. In such cases, simply replace the removed model with another model belonging to the unit that could have been removed as a casualty in order to maintain unit coherency. So you can't break, basically you can't break their coherency with shooting or templates and things like that. Characters. When a character takes a chariot as a mount, do they replace one of its crew? No. You pay the points for the chariot to include the crew, whether the chariot is included in your army on its own or as a mount. However, in reality, it might prove difficult to fit a character and a full complement crew on it. So it's perfectly acceptable to remove one or more of the crew models to make space for the character. In such cases, we think of the missing crew's profiles where representing the beasts pulling a character's chariots are bound to be bigger, stronger, better. So it's basically saying it counts as having them on there, but the model may not necessarily have them on there because the character takes up all the space. I've got a Tomb King on a Sphinx, and you literally can't fit anything else on the Howdah, really. It says, if a warband character joins a warband with a rank bonus of +1 or more, does the modifier to their leadership characteristic increase their command range? Yes. cannon do not directly target enemy models. They target a point on the ground. How does this work for targeting lone characters? Can a cannon be fired in such a way to hit a lone character that would normally be protected from shooting by the proximity of a friendly unit? So this is that rule where we talked about having the unit and you're within 3, you're not the closest, you can't be targeted. I did show that diagram off. It says, for the purpose of targeting lone characters, the rule is to protect characters from enemy shooting, even shooting that does not follow usual rules, although it does not protect them from templates. So, stone throwers, fill your boots. All I'm saying. Stone throwers indirectly firing these characters, that's going to be quite strong. Therefore, and in the spirit of the rule, unless they are the closest target to the cannon, an enemy character that is within 3 inches of a friendly unit that contains 5 or more models of the same troop type cannot be struck by a cannonball, even if their base lies directly under the path of the bouncing cannonball. However, if their base lies directly under the strike point, they are hit. So if you pick a point and you roll the dice and exactly 10 inches or whatever it is hits their base, then yes. So it's a 1 in 6 chance. So it's almost the same as having a lookout, sir. Away. It's a little bit more efficient, but there you go. If a named character is equipped with a mundane weapon, such as a lance or cavalry spear, and a magic weapon, can they choose to use their lance or cavalry spear, or must they use their magic weapon? They must use their magic weapon. However, some named characters will carry a backup should their other weapon be destroyed. And then this is talk about size of the battlefield. So it says the rulebook lists the minimum size as 30 by 44, 44 by 60, and 44 by 90. Do we have to use these sizes? So this is like the Age of Sigmar 40k new size. So like 44 by 60 is your new AOS 40k size. Now, a lot of people were sort of saying, oh, do I need to get 6x4s now? I've cut my battle mats. Do I have to get a new mat? It says, no, that's the size, right? So that's for 1,000 to 3,000 points. That's what I'm going to play on. I don't really care. That's what I've got. That's the boards I've got. And my new gaming table doesn't really have enough space for a traditional 6x4. It does say that 6x4 you can play on that, and it says the normal size is 6x4, and they're encouraged to use this. The minimum size are based on the folding card battlefields that Games Workshop produces. Ideal when space is an issue, smaller games. We prefer this for a game of 1,000 to 1,500. They want this more traditional, but to be honest, like, it doesn't matter. It says it's fine. So as a TO, like, if you've already got all your boards set up for AOS and 40k at this size, then just play on that size. Doesn't really matter. Then you've got magic items. Can the wearer of the wizarding hat cast spells whilst wearing armor? Yes, not actually a wizard. You just grant it from the hat. Can the wearer of the wizarding hat also wear magic helmets such as bedazzling helm? Yes, apparently, because one's an enchanted item, the other's a type of magic armor. We hope anyone equipping a model such a way would make the effort to depict it wearing 2 hats. That's quite funny. If the scroll of transmogrification is successfully used against a wizard mounted on a ridden monster, what happens to the mount? The wizard is transmogrified, but not their mount. In the example given, you'd be left with a frog riding a dragon. Yeah, sure. So you add your toughness bonus and your wounds to the frog, I guess. Then there's this little box at the bottom. Warhammer the Old World is a complex game of maneuver and counter-maneuver between tightly formed battle lines of densely packed infantry and cavalry. It is to be expected that unusual situations will arise when units get in each other's way, interfering with movement, shooting, combat, and so forth. To deal with this, we encourage players to resolve uncertainties in a way that keeps the game flowing, or to seek the opinion of an impartial third party at an organised event where such situation take greater significance. This is the role of the event organizer or the umpires, and players should always defer to the ruling of an official, as is right and honourable. Only the most dastardly rapscallion would argue with an exemplar of the hobby. And believe you me, being a head ref for South Coast GT for many years, there's plenty of those that were about in the day. For example, if moving, fleeing, overrunning, or pursuing a unit becomes too complex, With units blocking the movement of one another, you may decide to nudge one unit to the side to make space for the other, or you may decide to go back and resolve the movement of certain units in a different order. If such a resolution is impossible, the simplest solution is to rule that a unit cannot do the thing, by which mean it cannot make the move, cannot take the shot, and so forth. As stated on page 93 of the rulebook, what matters is that any rule is that players enjoy the game and it remains friendly. Basically saying, this is a long way of saying, if you're at an event, ask someone, a referee. If you're playing with your mates, don't be a knob. So that's basically what we're saying. I don't mean an alt knob, I mean a dickhead. So that's basically what it's saying. So yeah, no clarification on skirmishes. I find the cannon stuff is very interesting. Stonethrow has been able to target lone heroes outside of units if they can't see, even with indirect fire. You know, we talked about Stonethrows maybe not being very strong. That changes things quite a lot. That's really powerful. Lots of people want to run their heroes around and avoid being shot. Stonethrow just indirectly lobbing on top of heroes' heads, you know. And if it's a dwarf Stonethrower, that the better ballistic skill, that's gonna be quite scary. So yeah, I mean, it's good. It's nice to see cannons being taken down a notch and not being quite so scary if you're not in a unit. So that makes, when you write lists, and I'm gonna, in the list show, I'll talk about these principles of battlefield roles, which aren't game terms. Sometimes when I talk, I say things and people think, what's that term? What does disperse mean? That's me just describing the formation. It's not a game term. So I'll try and be clear when I use other words to describe something in the game. But anyway, so I don't think I even said multi-barreled gun. And people said, what's multi-barreled special rule? It's not a special rule. It's just me saying the gun has multiple barrels and rotates and fires, and that's why it's got multiple shots. That sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, these sort of battlefield roles are kind of the way I imagine stuff when I write an army list. So suddenly bunkers, which are units which are designed to protect the characters and not be fighting, are maybe not as necessary or will behave differently. So you might be able to dance around the back rather than sit in the front rank, which makes the hero even more protected than it did previously. Obviously, you've got to be a bit careful about stuff that can maneuver fast and get outside and you be the closest thing. But that's quite cool, because you would get that evade rule as well to dodge out the way. So heroes running around on their own. Like I was looking at the Cloak of the Dunes, and I think when you fly, you can't join a unit that doesn't fly. So that means your Lich Priest wouldn't be able to join a unit. And what's cool about that is that now he could be flying around, being able to march, and pretty much quite difficult to catch and kill, especially being a single model. So that might be the preferred go-to to protect your Hierophant if you're not on the Necrophil of Bone Dragon and you just go, sod it, try and kill me. I'm nails. Anyway, yeah, that's a tangent. So that's all the updates. I'm sure there'll be an update to this soon, because there's a lot more questions, I think, particularly about skirmishes. There's really no clarification at all about fleeing path. I was talking about the mass, the center mass. How would you work it out? It's almost like, do you use the mean, median, or mode? The way I would do it, if you have to work out the center mass of a skirmish, is take your longest point, whatever that is, then take a 90-degree line, bisecting that in the middle, and then basically the middle of that point on that axis would be the center, which is kind of like drawing an X across the unit, which might be a bit tricky. You know, I don't know how that works out, but yeah. Anyway, that's the show. Thanks for watching. Army List show will be going up shortly. It's going to be focused on chaos, so I'm going to do a show about that. I'm going to show the Army Builder app or website that I've been linked to, and go through that there. And if you're enjoying the old world, let me know. Share the video with your friends. I appreciate it. If you want to support me, the stuff in the links, you can buy stuff from Element through the link there. That gives me affiliate. You can get some extra crystals, even my code. Obviously, there's the Pro Painted affiliate, and you can get your Arca site. Anything that you do to help the show is that Ko-fi, you know, you can sign up to Patreon and you get your name in the credits, stuff like that. So anyone who supports me, I really appreciate it. If you just want to support me by telling a friend about me, that's even better. So thank you very much for watching. Catch you all in the next one, and I hope you're all having a great day. See you soon.